Decorating Pages is a podcast dedicated to taking you behind the scenes of the designs of your favorite TV shows and films. Each episode, I'll be sharing design stories from some of Hollywood's most famous sets. Interviews from set decorators, production designers, directors, and actors about creating the look of TV and film, about their design inspirations, and stories that take sets from page to screen. Hello, and welcome to Decorating Pages. I'm your host, Kim Wanup. It's quiet. It's quiet over here on this western front, I would have to say, of Los Angeles and working. I had said previously that I just started up with a couple friends, a little film group. My dog left the room. He's bored. And there was 7 of us at this meeting, and only one of us was working, and it was a commercial. So it's a little scary, I think. I then went the other night to the For All Mankind for Your Consideration for Emmys, and was talking to editor, and he also said that even on the editing side in post-production, it's a little quiet. So hope everybody has time to listen to this podcast instead. Since we all have a little time off, yeah. I haven't been listening to my audiobooks, and but I did just finally start. David Smith, who was on a couple episodes ago, had recommended David Milch's autobiography called Life's Work, and I'm only about a half hour into it, but it's pretty good. He does the prologue in his own voice, and you can hear him and that voice, and he's just kind of struggling. So the rest of the book is narrated by someone else who does kind of sound like him, though. So I'm buckled in and ready to dive into that. I just love David Milch's work as a writer, and I just think he's was amazing. And yeah. So that's my audiobook. And I didn't say it, but I was nominated as the set decorator peer group governor for the Television Academy. So I'm starting in my first year of that. And so far, it's so interesting to see how this organization really runs and how much passion and effort the people who work there put into the Emmys and these board meetings and the governor meetings and then the peer group meetings. It's a lot of meetings, but I like it. And there's a lot in store. It is the Emmy's 75th anniversary this year, so it should be a fun one. And tons of For Your Considerations coming up in the next 2 months. Emmy season is almost upon us. Voting submissions are open now for anyone who has a show. And then voting starts, I believe, like mid-June, June 15th, I think. So, yeah, we're getting into it. And I promise you I'm going to have some good interviews for that. I like to try to pick the winners, as you can see with Ernestine Hipper. I like to try to, talk to winners. I'm not going to lie. The last 2 weeks, I took last week off because I've been overwhelmed with how much I have been able to do this podcast. And I've had such great interviews coming up for you. It's going to be awesome. But what I've been watching is, I went for an oldie last week and started watching Private Benjamin with Goldie Hawn because I had forgotten exactly what it was about. She's a young woman who her family's solution for her is for her to get married, and then her husband dies, and she, at a desperation of being lost in life, joins the army. And there is that comedy in there. Eileen, oh my God, now I'm going to forget her name. And I kept watching things with her. Eileen Brennan. Fuck, I forget her name. She is in it. Yes, Eileen Brennan. That's what it is. Who plays the colonel or the captain or whatever, and just tries to make Private Benjamin's life like really hard, and she's fantastic in it. And then I think it's Amanda Sante is like the third love of her life, and then she goes down that road, and I had forgotten the ending, so it was good to see that. Production designer Robert F. Boyle, Jeffrey Howard, and set decorator Arthur Parker. If I did it right. Just a good old movie, I think. I think it's a good old movie. And Goldie Hawn is always so cute. And then I watched Summer Rental. I'll get to that in a minute. But after I watched Summer Rental, the next movie like that Amazon gave like as a suggestion was Clue, and I never turned down Clue. Another Eileen Brennan film, which I just love. I will watch Clue a million times if you let me. Production designer John Robert Lloyd and production designer set decorator Thomas Royston, who did Blade Runner, by the way. God, the house in Clue is amazing. And I was looking up, they did some exteriors in Pasadena, but it had to be a full build and everything. And I don't know what I'm looking for every time I watch it, but I love it. I have always wanted that dress that Leslie Ann Warren is wearing. I just adore that dress. And even Mrs. White, who is, just totally fantastic. And there's such good lines in it. And I don't know. I'm a dork. I just love Clue. And then I was looking on the TCM hub on, the HBO Max, and their new releases for April, and this movie Scarecrow came up, which I had no idea about, but I see the thing and it's Gene Hackman, so I'm in. I love a Gene Hackman. And Al Pacino. It's like 1973 or something. And again, Eileen Brennan is in it. She's got a little part, but I got like halfway through it. It's about like two hobos on a train. I wasn't really into it, but there's some good dialogue in there, and I love Gene Hackman, so that was production designed by Albert Brenner, who also did 2010, the year we made contact. So these, just huge production designers doing all these old great movies. So phenomenal. Like I said, I did Summer Rental again. My husband and I were actually looking for Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and it wasn't free. So one of the suggestions was Summer Rental, and he hadn't seen it. And directed by Carl Reiner, which is awesome. Production design by Peter Woolley, who did Blazing Saddles, and set decoration by Gary Marino. It's not a great film, but it makes me laugh every time, and I love Rip Torn and John Candy. What a sin. That sucks that he's not around, What else am I watching? Succession, like everybody else, with production designer Stephen Carter, and set decoration by George DeTata Jr. Succession is like I hang on every word. It's like Veep, It's like you gotta really listen or you're gonna miss something. The other one I'm watching is Perry Mason. Oh, he's back. Production design by Keith Cunningham, and set decoration by Helena Swoop. I like Perry Mason. I mean, I love the design of it and the period, and I really love that actor who was in The Americans. He's always so good. I forget his name. But it's good, and it's, I feel like I'm not watching that much that's airing live, so Succession and Perry Mason are kind of my what's going on this week. So, yeah. I watched a lot kind of in the last 2 weeks. So, some oldies and goodies, and then some fantastic new ones. So, happy about that. So, on this episode, I speak with production designer John L. Manahi, who over the last 2 decades has experience in designing sets and creating stunning visual effects for his films. Recently, he has been busy on the feature film Spinning Gold, which came out last week. It's a biopic about the life and career of legendary music producer Neil Bogart, who was the co-founder of Casablanca Records. And the film is, I believe, written and directed by his son. So very heartwarming sort of tribute to your father. But John's work on Spinning Gold perfectly captures the glitz and the glamour of the music industry of the 1970s. Everything from like Donna Summer to Gladys Knight to Kiss, recreating Kiss sets. You gotta watch that. And these iconic recording studios in the period and concert stages. So he definitely brought the film's setting to life and did a wonderful job doing it. I was lucky enough I got to meet John last week after we spoke. Spinning Gold had its premiere last week at the DGA and he attended. He said it was so awesome to see everyone's hard work on the film up on the screen. And they had a Q&A, and then they had an after party where he didn't even know, but a surprise guest of George Clinton came out, who was portrayed by Wiz Kafka in the movie, came out and they were singing. I mean, how awesome is that? Not more than a rap party, but like a premiere party. That's awesome. So, really enjoyed the film. As you'll hear, I really love hearing about or watching the development of music in the 70s and the influence and everything. And he is so into this film and how he was connected to it, being a musician and an artist. So I hope you enjoy. I feel very lucky, like with you, like to get to talk to people and people like giving me time to be able to talk about our work. It's really awesome for me to hear everything too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I watched Spinning Gold. My parents are huge Motown people. So I grew up with a lot of Motown, a lot of like that music. So for me, the story is like fantastic. Like I'm all about it. I'm scared to death of Kiss. Still am. but what a fantastic story to be a part of, and period, and like
it was unbelievable.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, for me it was kind of a dream job. I just wrote an article about my involvement, and the first time I heard Kiss, I was 12 years old. It was 1975. Mm-hmm. Thanksgiving. My cousin played Kiss Alive, and it blew my mind. I was already listening to music from my older sister: Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix,
nice.
Motown, Diana Ross, like the Beatles, like everything. We had a lot of music in my house. And I started playing guitar. I was in a band when I was 15. I moved out to California when I was 22 to pursue music, Oh,
this is up your alley. So, this is perfect.
Yeah. And so when I got a call basically from a producer named Blythe Frank, and she's friends with Jessica Martins, who was a producer on the show. And she was looking for a production designer based in New York. So Blythe recommended me based on her work with me and also my music background. And I had a call with Tim Bogart. As soon as I read the script, I was like, this is my job. Like, this is mine. Like,
yeah.
I don't care what you say. Like, I'm getting this job, But my meeting with him, this was like post-COVID. We had a Zoom call that was like 3 hours long, and I was hired on the spot, and it was basically like my passion, my experience, and, and a lot of other things. Like, I don't know what, you've seen my IMDb or anything.
Well, yeah. You have tons of credits that lend to being able to pull this off. I mean, it's not like it's your first gig. It's like...
Yeah, but the thing is if you look at some of those credits, like the movies were really indie, low budget, even though they were union films or whatever. And my reputation is like the kind of like pull a rabbit out of a hat production designer, you know, like slim budgets, tight schedules. You know, we all have to go through it. But this was like on another level. You know, this was, there were an insane amount of sets to build, and it had a lot of drama. There was a lot of, do you know anything about the background of the movie at all? Or
No, I don't know. No, not at all. Tell me.
so, well, you know, it started, this was a long process for Tim Bogart. He tried a long time to get the financing to do the film. He finally got it, and they started filming in Montreal in 2020, and then COVID shut them down. And so then they had a financial crisis. They lost their financing and a whole bunch of other stuff. So they basically had to reboot. And they were going to, they had shot so the movie takes place from approximately like 1959, 1960 to 1978. And they'd shot a lot of 1960 to 1967. So I was called in to do 1967 and 1978.
Wow.
And they came into New Jersey, and they really had a lot of challenges because at that time they were still considered like a tier movie, like not a major.
Right.
But through a lot of going back and forth with the union and the contract, it became a major about a month into pre-production. Okay. So it was so much like drama going back and forth with the union and the production. But we finally got a budget that allowed us to hire amazing crew, not like good crew, like amazing.
Right.
Like the people who I had were fantastic, and we busted it out,
Right.
but it was a lot of going back and forth between the between the production and the union. And also there was a lot of set decoration and a lot of set pieces up in Canada that were being held up. They couldn't get them across because of the COVID restrictions and all this other stuff. And then we finally got a lot of stuff from Canada, and when it arrived, almost all of it was like unusable, so we had to start from scratch anyway. So anyway, it was crazy.
Was it the same decorator on both parts? Two different decorators?
No, we had all different people. The only personnel were Tim and Byron Werner, the cinematographer.
Oh, nice. Well, that consistency helps. I mean, one thing I noticed, I didn't know if you did the casino in the very beginning. That's the kiss part. So was that you?
I did.
There's some really great lighting effects and shadow, and the use of red, and the use when he does the flashbacks and everything that I thought was really interesting. And you hear when I read flashback or montage in a script, I want to kill myself. But it's like so much work for 2 seconds. but yeah, I did notice lighting effect, and two, in the performances when they were showing off these artists, the lighting effects I also thought were really nice, and the texture that it gave your walls and everything. So I thought that was really nice.
Yeah. So we had no locations, 0 locations. Everything was built.
Really?
And
that ballroom and everything?
Yes.
Wow. Bravo.
So we had a really almost unusable space to build in.
Was it a warehouse with no padding for sound? I've done that.
Oh no, it was completely raw, and the warehouse was there's some fault damage in it, and the floor was like this, and the gradient in some places was from 0 to 24 inches. Okay, so when I walked in there, and there were cracks in the floor and everything, and when I walked in, I was like, we can't use this. This is unusable. And they were like, well, this is all we have, because there's a shortage of stage space on the East Coast. There's an amazing amount of production. So production companies take these long leases on production spaces. And so you have HBO in a stage for 5 years or 7 years or something like that.
Right. They don't want to give it up.
Yeah. So we tried. So I told them we had to construct a deck, and it was going to cost a lot. Like, they had not planned for that. Then they were like, well, are there any other alternatives to floating the deck? And I go, well, you might be able to do a cement pour if cement is cheaper to, you can probably pull this out and do a cement pour. So I had cement contractors come in, and they were like, the bid that was coming back was like 300,000, 500,000. Then I had another guy.
Well, the building owner was probably like, score. They're going to spend all this money on my building.
Oh, I've been here. I know what's going on. There's another option. We can inject foam underneath and lift the floor. The problem is there's running water underneath the building, and we have no idea how big the gaps are.
Oh my God.
So I'm just like, guys, we're building a deck. Yeah. You want a set, we're building a deck. So we had...
But funny enough that I don't know if you scouted it before they took a rent on it.
I told them they shouldn't use it.
Right,
of course I scouted it. Yeah.
Right. There has to be some sort of hey guys, you're going to save money here, but we're going to have to spend it here. That constantly happens. Constantly. It's a ridiculous game we play all the time.
Yeah, well, that's the conversation.
Yeah.
And in the end, it was to the exact number of what I said the budget was going to be. Exactly. Not even, we landed exactly where we said we were going to be. That's the part that is always, I'm not going to say frustrating, but it's a part of the job that is like, guys, haven't we done this dance before?
Well, they have. They all have. And
can't you take my word for it?
It's insanity. Doing things repeatedly and hoping for a different outcome. It's insanity. It's the game of, can this person, I feel it's like, can this person magically do this and just make my problem go away without reality interfering? Yeah. And it's a joke. It's a complete joke that producers play with the art department all the time. I don't get it.
But in the end, we built a deck.
Yeah.
And we built enormous sets. A ton of micro sets, a ton of changeover sets, live concert performances.
Yeah.
It was so ambitious. And I had 9 weeks, to do everything.
Really?
So,
I was wondering, in some of the scenes, set extension, or was there a round green screen in some of them to give that?
We had set extensions. We had green screen, blue screen. We had ceiling extensions. We had the same company that did Mank and some other some other films. And I had numerous conversations with the post-production VFX. We put the audiences into the concerts, and we recreated exact camera angles of footage that they'd gotten prior. So they went to Kiss concerts and got footage, and we matched angles, and this is the way
it looks great. All of it looked great. Like the stadium pieces, I think when him and his father at the track, that looked really great. Like I was like, oh, this is some Mandalorian shit going on here that I gotta ask him about. Like it was all like in the round. I thought it was great. It seemed like it.
It was it was every job, the post and VFX edition, like, always gets more and more complete and complex, and at first I was a little I guess anxious about that idea that these things could be created so easily or whatever. Right. But I found that production designers and art directors and set decorators are still essential, because you really do have to interact in a real space.
On something like a Mandalorian, where it's like half set, half extension, or like an Avatar where it's some scenes are all green or all blue, whatever. It does, to me. I've never, like, I just got off of a show that was heavy. I did For All Mankind season 4, and it's a lot of visual effects, and the designer is constantly talking to them and everything. But there is freedom given to post and VFX of what the design is going to be in some aspects, because they need to create these camera angles out of nothing. So, not every detail of like a spaceship can be thought out until they see like, oh, we need something there. So there is the design that maybe the designer won't be a part of, and I fear that too. I fear that too. Sure. of set dressing, of like not losing the control, or losing the control of not being in our theme, or in what we had in mind, and that's gotta let go. But as a designer, you have more interaction with VFX than a decorator. They don't talk to me.
The post houses are still pretty territorial, especially the bigger ones. The smaller ones are happy for whatever assets we could give. I've had post places where I provided all sorts of assets for them, where we shot high res images for backgrounds. We did graphics, paint textures. We would give them high res of paint textures and things like that. It really, it's a case by case thing. I mean, most of the time I'm given at least I can see some of the process where, I could see at least a high res still of what the addition might be, or what a sequence looks like or something. And it's always pretty good.
Yeah, they would come in and do like some 3D camera thing in the set to get like sometimes they would ask me like, what is the dimension of this box or whatever, so that they can duplicate it, or they can, so working hand in hand that way I appreciate, because I'm still part of it, and they're just duplicating our set dressing. I get that.
On Spinning Gold, Byron was really into these pre-visualizations. So he had all these shots that were mapped out in 3D, and he would give these like storyboards, So that saved us a lot of time
Oh, that's
in
always helpful.
focusing all our energy into certain things. And they really did go by those storyboards very closely. But there were a lot of spur of the moment decisions and changes. Did you see the dance Broadway sequence at the
Oh,
end of the
yes.
movie?
Yeah, I love that.
So that came about in the last few days of shooting. Tim goes, can we make a Broadway,
Sure.
show
Oh,
set?
sure.
I was like,
Sure. Shoots Friday. Sure.
Yes, question mark.
Yeah.
So what I did was I disassembled part of the set of Casablanca office, linked it to the church, which was mapped out directly across, and then brought in all these other set pieces that would just float as free scenery,
Right.
so candy store sign, a drum set that's just sitting there. Like, I just brought in all the key elements and just like placed them and mapped it out so that they could go from this point to this point.
Yeah.
And
Well, and it's very imaginative of when he's dancing, these little plot points that you're just, visually looking at. It worked really well with like their choreography and the song and everything. No, it was good. I really like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. I mean, probably not great to hear like a week before it shoots, but great visually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the thing is see, for me, right? The director will ask me something like that, right? And my immediate response isn't yes or no. It's let's see, because it's dependent on my construction coordinator and my scenic artist and everything else. So, a lot of times I've been on the other end of it where they just decide this without consultation.
Well, as a decorator, I thank you for being like that, because there are some designers who just say yes and without because although we know what we do, like I can't just pull 6 guys right now to do this. They're out doing returns, or like
Right.
I don't have the manpower to do this. I want to do it. I'm in.
Yeah.
But checking with people in your department is always really nice.
So, I usually call a meeting. My art director, Marie Wagner, was like a genius. Like, she was really amazing. And she made me decide that I would never be an art director again. Like, I was like, because sometimes, you're a production designer, you art direct or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't do what you do. You're the best art director I've ever seen.
That's a fantastic compliment.
She was fantastic. And she knew, like, right off the bat, I'd be like, can we do this Broadway thing? She goes, well, they're going to be dressing this, and the scenics are doing this, and we're still disassembling this, and the grips are doing, like, she just knew all that stuff. But then she'd go, yeah, I think we could pull it off if we do it this to this, and it shoots at this time. And then I would, have this conversation with Tim and Byron, and they would be like, whatever you say, it's cool. So we had a lot of interdepartmental cooperation, because I would bring in all my department heads for meetings multiple times a day or week to just get a sort of a state of the union about what's happening, And, that's how I work. I've always worked like that. I'm a scenic painter. I've built sets. I'm a carpenter. I'm an on-set dresser. I've done weapons. I've done props. I've done every job in the art department, basically.
Which is helpful, because then you know what to expect from people.
It does help, and they feel respected, and they feel heard, and they feel like they're part of the process. And when you ask people for ideas, and then you go, that's a great idea, let's do that. It gives them a sort of a sense of a stake in what we have to do, because now it's their idea.
I too find it that because if you have done a position, you know what the person is supposed to be doing, instead of like, a lot of times people will ask me to do wardrobe or props or something, and I'm
Sure.
like, well, obviously you don't know what I do, so that's cool. But I also read, I think in your bio, about being like in sculpting. Was that
Yeah.
when you were in Italy, right?
Yeah.
How was
I
that?
studied painting in it at the Academia in Florence for 3 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I started out in California as a music major, music composition, and I was having a real hard time. I was just basically a rock musician, self-taught classical. I studied a little bit, but then I went into music composition, and it was really hard. And I was struggling because I couldn't play piano on the level I needed to, and so I just took a drawing class just to get my mind off of things. And I've always been an artist as well. And I got a lot of encouragement from the art teachers. And one thing led to another. I got scholarships. I did really well. And I just switched my major to art. And then the next year I'm in Italy studying painting,
Wow. But wait a minute. You all of a sudden just started doing art, and you were fantastic at it? Like you had never...
No, I was an artist as a kid.
Oh, okay.
I was really good at drawing and painting.
Okay.
And I played music.
And you played music. Wow.
So I wanted to go to art school. My father really wasn't into it. So I just kind of bopped around playing in bands and things like that. And then I went out to California to be a musician, and one thing led to another, where I decided to go back to school. I went back to school at 25. I didn't do college straight in a row. I went to college, did really terribly, and then decided to, go back when I was 25, because I was like, I think I have more to accomplish.
I think that's smart, because then it's really your decision. It's your passion then.
I became a top student at 25.
Right.
And I went to Italy when I was 28. I took the entrance exam to get into the Academia, which was 8 days long in Italian. And it was hard, and I made it in. And then I spent 3 years at the oldest art school in Europe and learned traditional old masters technique.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. I would kill for that. I would kill for an hour of it. Like, that's amazing.
It changed my life,
Yeah. And the experience probably projects onto all of your projects in some way. Like, you're probably always grabbing from what you've learned there, or,
yes. So one of the things that I think I pride myself on as a production designer is I come loaded with a ton of experience, a ton of knowledge of history, literature, art history, music history. I'm a huge classical person. I worked at Tower Records Classical on Sunset for years. So I know a lot about certain subjects. So if I get a project that's historical, I can really bring a lot in terms of what the validity of the historical aspect of the script is.
Yeah.
I did a movie called The Artist's Wife, and I was brought on because of my fine art ability and my art history, and I ended up doing all the paintings for the film in addition to designing it.
I saw that. It was Peter. It wasn't Peter O'Toole. It was I forget the guy's name now. But Bruce Stern. I was looking at, and then you have an article on your Facebook page about him and his process for making the movie, and everything was fantastic, I thought.
Oh, that was another project that was really hard, but it was really rewarding because I was able to create uh, an artistic identity for multiple characters, and I had the director sent the key painting to an art dealer, an art appraiser, sent an image to it. I wanted Bruce Dern to be a cross between like Franz Klein and Gorky or somebody like an abstract expressionist. And he sent this painting, which was the key prop for the movie, to his art dealer, and the art dealer goes, "This is an amazing painting. It's like a cross between a Franz Klein and like a Gorky," And he writes me back like flipping out, that these paintings were dead on in terms of the artistic identity of the character historically.
Oh my God, I'm so jealous of your talent. I'm so jealous.
Well, thank you. I mean, the thing is what's really amazing is production design allows me to use all the things I know into one job.
Yeah.
And I stumbled into it. It was one of those things where I didn't even know what working on a film was like.
Well, then let me thread that together. So you're in Italy. Do you go back to New York and then you like fine artist and then you're painting and then working in TV or film or?
So I come back from Italy. I get a job in a paint shop doing faux finishes. I do marble, gilding, wood, metal. So essentially I'm learning all the scenic artist techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And then I leave that job and I get a job as an art handler, which is installing and moving fine art. But what I had to do was I had to take down, move, and reinstall like monumental bronze statues and stuff like that, or marble statues. So it required a certain amount of planning and execution. And so those two things combined into me being able to be a production designer, although I didn't know it. Mm-hmm. And I had a friend who's a cinematographer working on an indie in Brooklyn, and he goes, "Hey, you might be pretty good at this. It's a sci-fi movie. We're making a lot of robot props and stuff like that. You might want to check it out."
Right.
So I get a script and I just start breaking it down. I didn't know that's what you had to do. I just started writing down the locations and what I thought they would need and all that stuff. And I have a meeting with the director, and the director says, "This is like exactly what I was thinking. Like, it's like you took the words from my script and turned it into visual information," which is what
nailed it.
Production design is. So my first job in film ever was art director on a feature film. And you just
did it. You just instinctively knew how to do it.
Yeah, but I made a lot of mistakes. I mean, along the way, I've had nightmare jobs. Nightmare. Like, I could tell you a million stories of horrible mistakes, I mean, I could tell you so many, but the one of the most is the first film I actually production designed was a film that never got released, but it's called Zoo, and it has Deborah Harry, David Carradine, Paul Bartel, Paul Sand, Ronnie Spector. Like, it's this star-studded movie. And it was about a serial killer that killed animals instead of people in this farming community.
Oh, no.
And I had to do this scene where it was a farm that had been this slaughter, of all these animals. So I had the idea to make these scenes look like sacrificial, like have a sort of a supernatural element to it. So I had a lot of taxidermy made for this, which was great. But then we worked in an actual slaughterhouse, and I asked the guy, hey, can you get me like cow skins and lamb skins and stuff like that? He goes, oh yeah, I get you whatever you want. And I was like, okay. And I thought these were going to be like,
Oh no.
just clean. So we're at the place at the set to dress it, and a car comes driving up, and it looks like it's at 7. It's coming down a dirt road, and the PA is, driving like this, and she's freaking out. And she goes, do I give you the stuff? And I'm like, yeah. I go around to the back of the car, and there's like blood pouring out of the back of the car. And there's fresh cow skins in plastic bags. Okay. And my art department was like, I'm not dealing with that. I'm not touching it.
Yeah, I don't.
So
that's props.
I get these giant acid gloves, and I, lift these things up and nailing them to like these wooden planks and wooden fences and stuff like that. And it's gruesome and it was insane.
You're lucky Peter didn't come and nab your ass. Like, I don't know.
Well, this was like in 1997 or 8, so anyway, I mean, and then the whole, shoot crew comes, and as soon as they start rolling, the flies started to come, and it was like, God. It was...
Well, at least they didn't have to pay for that level. They didn't have to pay for flies or visual effects. I gotta tell you,
I really want this movie to be released because it sounds really dodgy, but it was a kind of a dark comedy. It's a very cult.
I could see that
movie kind of thing.
I could see that going that way.
It's got insane sequences in it. But at that time, I was dressing sets myself, even though I was the production designer.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
you just do. I mean, if you're working and everybody's got to dig in and get it done, hopefully the production designer helps out too. I don't like it when I see the designer doing stuff or like helping, like, you're embarrassing me in a sense, but if there's no one else around, and I'm appreciative of you helping me. Like, that's how I think.
I just learned on the job. I learned through trial and error. And as I gained more experience, I gained a little more confidence. And I found that you really have to have a great team, and you have to have really good communication, and you have to be able to head off problems before they begin. Once you're in a problem, it becomes stressful, like with every second that passes, because it's impacting the schedule, it's impacting everything. Yeah. So you have to get to the point where you can see these things and communicate them before they happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Try to get your magic ball out and anticipate things that, might not go so well. But in Spinning Gold and the different performances that you had for like Donna Summer and Parliament, and I mean, were you just watching so much footage to try to, obviously, the vibe. We all kind of know the vibe, but to visually get that.
Yes.
Was that?
I had tons of archival footage. I took frames and printed them, and we worked on specific, for example, the Kiss instruments. I knew what those instruments were going to be, and I called Gibson Guitars and got those instruments. And because I was a musician, I knew exactly what I needed, and I had these conversations from an educated point of view, and I was able to get a lot of authenticity in certain things. And then some things were really just created because this was really like a fantasy / memory of Neil Bogart's confession or whatever, of how this whole story unfolded. So we did have like a magical realism element to it. We did have a lot of fantasy elements to it where, certain things were implausible, but we allowed it. We tried to stay faithful to the historical aspect of certain things that fans were going to really call us out on.
Right, right. I mean, I just kept thinking, because I just listened to Kiss on Howard Stern, of how much they have marketed their whole world and how that comes up in the movie too, about the marketing of Kiss and everything. And I was wondering if, like, because you have the Kiss sign in the back, which is like their font, it's their thing. I was wondering, like, clearance wise, like, was that a burden? Was that like
some things we were able to clear, and some things we couldn't clear their makeup. We couldn't clear their costumes. I couldn't clear the logo either. So what we did was we made alterations to them that would fit within the scope of what was allowed, that wouldn't violate a copyright. And we also had some early source material from Joyce Bogart's notebooks and sketches of prototypes of proposed costumes and proposed makeups.
Wow, that's a gem. That's amazing.
So we were able to get close because this is leading up to Kiss's big release, right? It sort of peaks with the recording of Kiss Alive, which was their big breakout that brought all their real fans to them and turned them into record-selling superstars. Right. At that time, they couldn't sell any records, and so we were able to take a certain amount of license with making this Kiss finding their way.
Right. I had no idea about, like, I know of Kiss. I don't really know that story. I had no idea about Donna Summer being like a single mom, I'm assuming in Germany, I think it was, and like being, re-recording that song to the times to make it, more disco, more funky, everything. I found that completely fast. The Gladys Knight thing, like, I can't wait for my parents to actually watch this movie. They're gonna love it. They're gonna love it. But I thought, as a character and watching them age him was interesting also. But it was also in your design of, like, the innocence of that drugstore to, like, the more grittiness or of, like, the Buddha recording studio or his office, and how I feel like your color palette changed throughout his life. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, so I have to give a shout out to Michelle Laliberté, who was the designer in Canada. Okay, so she did the drugstore and Buddha records, right? So that's everything leading up. And so I did from that point forward. So you can see that mark is what separates it, is that's clearly where I went off to create the later part, because that was the focal point of when Buddha Records turned into Casablanca Records. So I took over from there, and we wanted to have a clear shift from those two halves of Neil Bogart's life, which is basically what that is. He moves to New York, he meets Joyce, and all that is, it was essentially two scripts, okay? Like, I got sent a script that was, I don't know, man. I think it might have been 200 pages. Like, it was a really long script, but they had shot, we weren't going to shoot all of it because they had shot a large chunk of what was already done. So what I got was the second half of the movie, essentially, right? Even though how it's edited, it plays back and forth and it's intermixed and things like that. But it's a story in two halves. And Michelle Liberté did really the early stuff, where he's a singer, he's like a pop singer. He's
Right.
trying to be a teen idol, and his early naive beginnings,
What a
that
life.
was her,
What a life. What a, like, changing his name 3, 4 times, like being a singer, then a record producer. Like, what an incredible career. And so sad because he dies fairly young.
Yeah,
And what could,
39,
yeah,
I think.
what could have been. Did you have to, because you said you built everything, did you have to rebuild anything?
Yes. So what happened was we were to get a bunch of set material from Canada. And I was waiting on this stuff because I needed it for certain things. But what came was severely damaged, disassembled with a sawzall or something, unlabeled, unorganized. So we did have to rebuild and augment sets that were coming in. And then what we did was we reused set material to create Joyce's apartment, for example. Like we would just be like, I'd be like, I don't care, just reface these flats with brick.
Right,
like
right.
let's just take this out. It's the recording studio. I don't give a shit. Add this over here.
Right.
Let's put a loft up here. And the recording studio is now Joyce's apartment.
Yeah, such a
the
little
kitchen's
love
over here.
nest she had. Such a little.
Yeah,
like-
and see, the thing is those were the sets that were. I didn't have to refer to anything historical, and I didn't have to reinvent the wheel on them. It wasn't like I needed to design something so complex to tell a story. I used the set decorator to do that.
Yeah,
for me
it was
because-
really layered, really nicely layered, and like
Thank you.
period, and like really great. I thought her part was
Trisha
great.
Peck is her name, and she really came through. Like everything I asked, she got. Everything I needed, she did. Her crew were fantastic, and I did say I wanted a few things in there. Like I said, I want a bunch of airline bags. They used to have these airline,
like the TWA and like the Pan Am.
I want it to seem like that she's traveled a lot and she keeps getting these bags. Like, put a bunch of bags there. Give me like an art station here where she's working on drawings and crap like that. Like so. It was really easy for that type of stuff. Like that wasn't the hard part. The hard parts were doing a water gag with a live, the sprinklers come down.
Oh yeah, on the
all right.
Yeah.
Tim's like, okay, so we want to have a sprinkler. I'm like, that's a 1974 Gibson Flying V that's going to get completely soaked.
Yeah.
This is a
change your angle
set, a pearl drum set that's going to get waterlogged. Like,
yeah.
And then it was also, the stage we were building in didn't have any drainage. So what I had to do was create a sort of a pool with a liner that was just hanging over the whole thing. And then we floored over that. And then we would lift up the platform and then we would vacuum out the water. But I told them, there's a limit to how many times this could be done. And they were like, it doesn't matter. We're going to let the sprinklers run. We don't give a shit. But I had to make sure that the other sets didn't get flooded.
Well, yeah.
I
mean, they're only thinking in their one shot. You gotta think ahead. You gotta think about how it's gonna affect even all the set dress. What I think is like, well, that was a rent. If that was a rental, that sucks. Like all those nice chairs and everything.
What we did was we knew they were all going to get wet. So what we did was we had, we replaced the pads. I had pads made, for example, and we got all our own linen stuff. Yeah. And, we knew that was always the case. We knew the carpet was going to be a throwaway. We knew
right.
but it was also we didn't want a mold situation to develop because it was very hot in the place we were shooting. You know, it was a warehouse, so there wasn't air conditioning. And then when you have wet, you know, flats and things like that, you run the risk of mold starting to come. So we had to
all of these things you have to think of as a production designer and art department of like, we can do that, but the reality is, we got a bunch of water's heavy, by the way, and coordinating that with special effects, like we got.
The thing is that Tim really wasn't like oblivious to any of that. And if you see the way his father did business, like Tim was sort of the same way in terms of doing the movie. Like he was always like, we can do it. We can figure it out. Like it's okay. We'll deal with that.
Those type of people are great. They're great.
You know, we had a great relationship. I really, you know, it was very stressful at times, but it was also it was built on an excitement of creative ideas, you know?
And how, I mean, just, I would think too, if you're in this project and he's being a part of it, you want it to be well done, and he's telling the story of his father. I mean, you have to give it your all. The passion for him is got to be unbelievable.
I was honored that he trusted me, you know, so much, and he believed in me. He really did. He was always really happy with everything. Like, that's awesome. Overjoyed, actually. When he saw the Kiss footage of the Cobo Hall concert, he called me up like in the middle of the night. He was like, dude, I just put our footage next to the real footage and it's fucking dead on. I was like, dude, I'm so happy right now. Thank you. Oh my God,
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah. That makes it all worthwhile.
It was a great experience. I mean, it was hard. I'm not going to lie. It was brutal, to be honest. But it was also, we knew what we were getting. We knew that the stuff we were getting was fantastic. Like the whole mirror, the dancing mirror.
Oh, I love that. You know? I love that scene, the Donna Summer scene. Oh my God, I love it.
We created this mirror camera rig, okay, with and these mirrors on wheels, and so it's a mobile house of mirrors that and this was also done very improvisationally. You know, we were.
Did you build those?
We had to test.
Did you build those, or was they rentals?
We built all of. We built all of.
Yeah. That's right.
And we had to test various two-way glass, you know, because some of them were not going to be transparent enough, and some were going to have were not going to allow for the camera to do certain things. So we had a variety of tests. We also had to create these rigs because when you have a mirror this high, the base has to be a certain width because they'll be top heavy. So when they're spinning around and going around in a circle on a stage, you don't want to run the risk of them tipping over. So you have to have a certain center of gravity, a certain weight. They have to be easy for a dancer to move, as well as camera to be able to sit on. You know, we had cameras sitting on one of them.
It's such a choreographed motion of the camera and people moving the mirrors, and Donna Summer's like sitting in the chair. It's really, and I love too that they brought her daughter in, you know, like always having her daughter around really like brought it down to a relatable, I thought, sense of like why she's doing all this. And, you know, I just thought it was great little, just a great little detail. I thought that ties people in emotionally to what Donna Summer's process was. I don't know, I did. I loved it. It's a gem. The whole movie is a gem. I was watching. I was, you know, what I did like and then not like a little bit was I liked that the music wasn't exactly Gladys Knight singing that song. It was this artist version of it. Or like this, or Jason Derulo, like all of these artists who are playing these other people and their interpretation of these songs, I thought too was like, that's so smart. That's so smart to have that. So you're not exactly like replicating, but you're giving it your own spin. And like you said before, it's his own version of this, like a dream sequence or a memory or whatever. So yeah, that's fantastic. I thought it was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I loved it. I'm so glad to get to see it.
Thank you. I'm coming out to LA for the premiere I'll be there next week.
Oh, fantastic.
It's at the DGA, so we're having a screening there, so I'll be out, and I'm excited.
So I hope you enjoyed that, because I found it so fascinating how, I mean, John was a musician and then a fine artist. I mean, in Italy, that is an experience of a lifetime, I gotta say. I'm so jealous. I mean, you gotta be talented to, you know, be accepted and go to school over there and you know, have all that. And I also think it's really important how he was saying that he's been everything. He has decorated on small films. He's been a scenic. He's done everything. So always don't forget that experience helps you in every position you have in the art department. It's all valuable. You won't regret it. But yeah, such a pleasure to speak with him and to meet him. You know, it's one of the nice things. I try to stay in touch with a lot of the people I get to meet on this podcast, and so it's really nice always to just be familiar with other people who I wouldn't have the opportunity to without this little podcast. So yeah, thanks John. And congratulations on the film. It's wonderful. If anyone can catch it, it's good. What do I got for you? So next week, I have production designer Maya Siegel, who production designed the Apple Plus series Hello Tomorrow, which I've told you about, and I've told probably everyone about, because I think it's just very innovative, and the design I love, and super excited for you to hear the interview of all of the sets that they did for the whole season. And I actually had to postpone her releasing her episode because I wanted to talk about the whole season. And so I talked to her like almost 2 months ago or a month and a half ago. So been waiting to release that to you. I have production designer Catherine Eder from the series BMF, Black Mafia Family, and Hellraiser, the new innovation of Hellraiser that came out a year or so ago. So yeah, that was a good one. Made me watch Hellraiser. I have production designer Clarence Major, production designer Jordan Ninkovich, production designer James Bartle. I mean, I got a lot coming up, and then I have a slew of Emmy contenders that I am booking up, people, and some good stuff there. What else? Follow on Instagram, TikTok. Sign up on the website for the email that comes out every week that I do of who's coming on the program. That would be cool if you did that. And the coolest thing you got to do this week, besides represent your holiday, is just rate and review this little podcast, and you'll be happy about it. I'm sure you will. I hope you got an earful. I'm Kim Wanup for Decorating Pages.